maybe people can start to get a comprehension of how dumb people get. See, when I found this Q and shit. Alright, so these people are always obsessed about the Democrats doing like the opposite of them. See how this is in an anonymous posting realm that claims to be in Q clearances. See, in Satan, this is a blatant negative Q clearance realm. A blatant. Do you see the difference? I know that caveman brains have difficulty fat lifing with their wiener cocksmiths, but perhaps stop whacking off on a computer and think in a brain for a second. Blatant is not anonymous. ClearNet is not dark web. I claim to be the child of somebody with a Q clearance. That is not claiming to be this. So, if somebody starts having their weird political party influencing their work life, whatever delusional gaslights you people suffer from living in the world of being sociopaths and cheating Don Trump into office and shit, whatever delusions you people have after your post-pedo bangs and shit, whatever dumb thoughts that you guys get outside of reality, pretty easy to tell the difference. Here I am on ClearNet, blatantly putting my name, my face, my ID on my YouTube. A lot of what the purpose of QAnon is to essentially manipulate information about what is basically George Bush CIA style that Don Trump was using, that George Bush Jr. was using, that George Bush Sr. was using, that Ronald Reagan was using, and Nixon. So, Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton and Obama and Joe Biden, they don't use skull pedal bang as a form of CIA. So, you people know that a lot of what this is about arose during the black man's rule over the world, where basically a concerted effort to seed misinformation about this type of stuff, this clearance stuff and what people were doing, that is where a whole misinformation machine was created around the time that they started to realize that John McCain probably wouldn't win. They probably started freaking out, and that's when this type of stuff started. Misinformation systems that are meant to psych out people in certain ways, insiders knowing what to do, and then misinformation that pushes people away from what our government's Republican style clearances are like. Basically. So, the whole idea is that cop gangs and the House of Burgess theoretic of the Skull CIA, that is this type of stuff. In modern 21st century, in ways Obama would have had people in military uniforms telling them about pedo bangers. Right? And that, from that, the Pentagon or somebody probably would have been like, describing it as like the dumbest things to ever do in the world. And then their like theoretical like fix to it would be, because it's so dumb and retarded to do blackmailing clearance, that they probably would have had their most extensive geniusness come in the form of a counter rock. Since that was so dumb and retarded, they probably would have recommended doing something smart instead. And that would have operated around essentially clearances being based on all available data that shows the person not having a blackmail and not having extortion and living somewhat of a moral, fucking ethical, law abiding life. And so that would have been a smart way of doing something. And so I imagine that probably the Democratic Party probably practices that form of a clearancing system. And so what this is when a Democrat comes in office, essentially they freak out, they like take copies of basically a DOE clearance system. They hide everything that's sitting in the archive system on dark web, waiting for Pedo Banger to come back into office. And then around here they hide it in the Mormon temple. Guys, during Republican presidency, they don't have to worry about any of their blackmails if they're in a clearance system. But during the Democratic Party, they freak out. They take illegal copies of Q systems, databases, and then they AI pull with Nazi or Russian AIs all of the stuff out of what would be a Pentagon clearance index or something. Because essentially, those people, it grays out the blackmail that basically in the Democratic Party, some of their blackmails would have them down here, okay? At the bottom of the clearance system, with no access, with no need to know ability, with nothingness, and probably being fired and potentially prosecuted. That's why they take illegal copies of Q clearance systems. And so, yeah, this is where essentially then the cops, they basically during Don Pedobank Trump, they essentially like hide. Well, they run a clearance silencing system where they attempt to extort or silence you and terrorize at you if you're talking about anything that has to do with their skull pedobank shit. And so I like to remind people that right now is the era of Joe Biden, the senator who does logic and rationality and smart. And then the witch, she does that too. And then essentially you can't really get that high in the Pentagon having pedobanks. So the reality is that most of those people have slaves. Okay?